Welcome to the Management Minute. I'm Becky Amble, and I'd like to share some ideas that I gained this week in a conference with the president of the University of Southern Florida, Steve Curl. So he was talking about crisis, and obviously we've all been living in that environment. So I'm going to pull back so you can see the chart here. On the vertical axis is the severity of the crisis. On the horizontal axis is time. And as you can see here, there's crisis 1, crisis 2, and crisis 3. The flow is usually at the beginning of a crisis. We have some idea something is coming, and so we are working on assessment and preparation. Once we have passed through the peak and things are coming down as far as the crisis goes, then we focus on recovery and reflection. And we do that again in the next crisis and in the third crisis. Usually we don't have more than one crisis going on at any point in time. And what Steve shared, which is I think interesting and I wanted to share with you, is this bottom graph where you've got crisis 1, and before that is resolved, you have crisis 2, and then you have crisis 3. And in Florida, just to recap, crisis 1 would be the virus, crisis 2 would be the unrest, protesting, and riots, and crisis 3, they're getting ready for a hurricane. So they live in a pretty intense time. When you have this situation where the crisis is overlapping and piling on top of the last crisis before it's even done, you have an increase in stress for everyone involved, employees, leaders, everyone in the community. You have decision making that probably is less effective because there isn't time to properly assess and run through decision making models that you might have, or even whatever your process is, and you have less time to prepare. So the one point that Steve made, in addition to all of this getting compressed and these points, is to really remember to focus on your long-term strategic orientation and focus on your long-term goals and long-term aspirations. He said even have separate meetings just to make sure you are focusing on the long-term direction of the organization and continue your long-term planning. Focus on 1-year, 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year goals, and make sure your team does not lose sight of that, because in a crisis, it's pretty easy to get distracted. Thanks.